We're going for like good cop, bad cop. He's the good cop, I'm the bad cop.
I want to be the bad cop.
So, hey everyone, I'm here with Travis.
How's it going, everyone?
So, what sort of area do you want to tell the guys of Heroes do you work on mostly?
Oh, sure. I'm the lead game designer for Heroes of the Storm, so I work on pretty much everything.
Okay.
Yes.
So we can ask all the questions, all the difficult questions. You guys might want to check out Kendrick. Just did an interview beforehand, so I'll try to build on a few of the questions that Kendrick asked. So there should be links down below to check out that stuff. So the first question I wanted to open up with was an unusual one. It was from a Discord group, and I'm going to change it a little bit because it wasn't super appropriate. But basically, it was saying Alexstrasza, doesn't she look lovely? In maybe, you know, slightly more lewd terms. But the question I wanted to ask was, in Overwatch, for example, I know that there's a whole lot of stuff in terms of they've got a lot of different, you know, body shapes and silhouettes for the female characters, and that was a big concern for them. Has there ever been any like feedback community stuff in terms of heroes? Is that ever a concern when you're choosing what heroes might be coming next, that you've got that sort of variety?
Yeah, definitely. It's always a concern. We want to be, so we're running this interesting challenge where Heroes of the Storm is really showcasing characters that you know from other games. So we have to be true to that. Yeah. We also need to bring them into our game and make them work for us. In a lot of cases, our game, it's a very action-packed game, so you need to be able to pick up things in a blink of an eye. And so the silhouette of the character is vitally important. Yeah. So you do see us changing silhouettes on things a little bit, sometimes not even noticeably. I'll use Hanzo as the example. Hanzo in our game, he's actually slightly broader shouldered than he is in Overwatch to kind of help that silhouette stand out. And the same thing with Alexstrasza. She's an elf. We've got other elves in the game too, but we want them to be differentiatable at the blink of an eye. All
right, let's move in a slightly different direction then. One of the questions that a lot of people asked for me to ask was about the roles in the game. Something I've talked about a bit as well, that we've got the same role system, warrior, support, specialist, assassin for a while, but you know, you guys have changed quick match rules recently so that, you know, you've got sustained heroes as separate and bruisers. Do you have any plans to update the role system that the user sees on their end?
Yeah, definitely. We're looking at going to 7 roles instead of 4. Okay. I don't even remember off the top of my head.
Try.
Yes, but it is splitting things like tanks into, warriors into tanks and bruisers, support into true support and healers, that kind of thing. It's a matter of getting the development time to update things. There's a lot of, this kind of permeates the systems. It's not just the user interface, but like the quest system and stuff has to be redone to take this into account. Internally, some of the systems already use them. For instance, like you mentioned Quick Match. Quick Match already breaks them up. And when we're developing these heroes, we already think in those terms. So.
Okay, cool. Kind of building on that as well then, in terms of, I suppose one of the benefits of that would be it'd be more clear to newer players how the game determines roles. One of the big things that you're changing, that I think one of my favorite things is how you're changing the objective timers on the maps to standardize them, which certainly as a content creator trying to focus on guides, you know, there's so much stuff. For the new player especially, that's a massive learning curve. So you're simplifying that. Are you going to be looking at maybe incorporating more tutorials in the game in order to kind of help people out now that it's kind of, I suppose, simpler to create tutorials, or is that something that we need to do as the community?
I would absolutely love to. We have a finite number of development resources, and it's always hard to figure out where we want to go. We have looked at things like tapping streamers in the community to help get us like good tutorial videos that we can post on the website, and then allow us to bring those into the game client, which might be easier than us creating them all ourselves, that kind of thing. Cool. It's definitely important that players learn these things, and then we're just trying to balance it against things like matchmaking updates. You know, it's
of course,
a tough challenge every day.
Let's talk about the matchmaking. So you guys are doing the performance-based matchmaking. So Kendrick was already asking a few questions. So one of the things that I want to take a different angle on is you were talking about can you game the system, and you were saying that no, you're not able to game the system. My question is, what about players thinking that they can game the system regardless of whether they can or not? And how are you going to try to help deal with that? Because, you know, if everyone's asking, can you game the system, obviously the intent probably is that players want to try do that for the best thing that they can get. Yeah,
let me address first off the core of the whole thing. Some players anyway, think of MMR as a reward system, right? Yeah. MMR is simply a rating of your skill, and the reward for the system having a good indication of your skill is that you're getting great games. And that's why one of the things, we keep talking about showing MMR in game, for instance, and we'll probably do that someday, but we have to be careful about that because then players chase it even more. Yeah. So a player wanting to get their MMR up isn't necessarily a good thing. If your MMR is higher than your actual skill level, you're just going to lose games more. So just take that as a baseline, right? So then you kind of get in the idea of this new performance-based matchmaking. I mentioned this to Kendrick as well. You can kind of think of it as machine learning. So the system is sort of learning how players are playing and adapting to that. So if for some reason the entire community looked at a hero of a particular type and said, you know what, to do really well with this, I'm going to play it this way, the system's going to pick up on that. And it's going to learn that, and that's going to become the norm that's being compared against.
Yeah. One question I had, again, in this sort of regard as well was, what was it now? Oh, it slipped my mind. I had it there in a second. Oh, no. So it was, I can't remember. I'll come back to it. Okay, one question that people were quite interested in as well was the laning changes, such as removing ammo from turrets, the regen globes being neutral after a certain amount of time. And one of the big questions was, are you guys kind of inspired by other MOBA games, like, for example, League of Legends, where the laning is a more complicated feature, and you have aspects of Heroes of the Storm that I've seen a couple of times in pro play, but not really in general play, such as freezing minion waves, controlling them in certain places, to kind of have that, you know, really complicated control of the lane. Is that something that you want to be coming into Heroes more with these changes, or what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. I say yes and no. I mean, obviously we play everything that's out there. You got to check out everything, and you take inspiration from all sources. But we're really looking just for what's best for our game in particular. And so these laning changes are about, we want to make laning more impactful, more meaningful, and as part of that, we want to encourage more aggressive play. You know, actually being in that lane and kind of pushing that lane, as opposed to, you know, just destroying the minion waves and then leaving and coming back later and dealing with it. So it really just comes down to that.
Okay, and that's so you're looking at definitely changing up the early game laning phase. Are you going to be looking at heroes like specialists, especially like, for example, Abathur with his split push Locust build, where in the late game depleting ammo can be quite an important part of getting effectiveness out of that? Are you looking at taking, you know, a balance pass at those heroes that might rely somewhat on destroying ammo as a strategy, especially in the late game?
Yeah, it's something we're keeping an eye on. Internally, it was one of our initial concerns of how specialists do it. Zagar is another example, you know, where exactly, you think of that type of thing. And internally, we haven't seen a lot of difference in them. The effectiveness hasn't dropped off that much. They're still getting a lot of the siege damage on there. That push potential's there. We will be keeping an eye on it. All these tests, all these things, we are going to be on a PTR for a 3-week-long period, so we can get information there. And then obviously, we're not afraid to tweak things once it goes live as well. So we're keeping an eye on it, and if they do need that bump, we'll give it to them.
All right, cool. I remember the previous question, which was one of the things I thought was really interesting from your panel yesterday when you were talking about the performance-based matchmaking, was you had the example of basically like a master player smurfing on an account, and you compared the two graphs of how their MMR changed in the current system and then how you were analyzing it with the performance-based system and it changed as well. So I was just curious, have you been like analyzing this across, let's say, different leagues of play, and are you finding that there are large changes, that the performance-based MMR does have larger changes in, let's say, bronze as opposed to platinum or anything like that? Or is it fairly standard across the leagues? Do you see any big changes anywhere in terms of stuff that you've found already from looking at the stats?
Sure. We've been looking at it kind of just, we've been running it in parallel with the existing matchmaking system for a while now, because we want to let this thing soak and see how it's doing. And it's kind of funny because internally, like the guys that are working on this are using it to look at their own personal matches. And so they'll get in this game, like one of their matchmaking guys, he's a diamond level player, and he's like, I keep running into this guy and he feels like he's misplaced. And you can go look that up, and sure enough, if we were actually applying these algorithms to him, he'd be down in platinum instead of diamond. So those kind of things pop up. They're just anecdotal things. They're not that useful from a validation standpoint, but they are interesting.
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure I must be Grandmaster #1 across all regions. Probably, so I'm just waiting for the system to come in, so I get that. I think that's actually pretty much everything I had to ask. So thank you very much.
Sure. Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Yep.